Well, I think there's some big shifts happening to global value chains, which are going to have some major implications for the ASEAN region. And I think some of those things, some of those trends will be negative, and some of them will be positive. So I think if you look at things like emerging technologies, particularly in manufacturing, like 3D printing and artificial intelligence and blockchain, this is going to change the way that products are manufactured. And I think what we'll see is that global value chains will become much shorter, and they will move much closer to the end consumer. So factories, I think, factories that are serving Europe and America will move out of Asia and will move back to Europe and to America. So new technologies will have a big impact on manufacturing value chains. I think the rise of environmental concerns is going to be equally important, and companies in the future will have to be much more careful about their carbon footprint. So again, they want to have shorter transport distances, so factories will move closer to their end consumer. And then I think that the whole character of globalization is changing. Obviously, everyone knows there are big trade wars happening at the moment, but I think these are probably going to get worse because people are questioning, in certain markets, the value that they receive from globalization and global trade. So those are three trends which I think will be quite negative for ASEAN and global value chains. But I think there are two other trends which will be quite positive. One of them is the fact that we're seeing the rise of services. And global value chains historically have been quite focused on manufacturing. Increasingly, they'll be focused on services. And I think as we see services value chains grow, those value chains will get much longer, and that presents huge opportunities for ASEAN to get involved in that business. So the rise of services, I think, will be very positive for ASEAN. And then equally, we have a redistribution of the global economy. It used to be centered on Europe and America, but increasingly places like ASEAN and China and everywhere else are growing very rapidly, and so the global economy is becoming more spread out around the world. And this is very positive for ASEAN because it means that the region here in Southeast Asia is becoming its own big market. And as it becomes a big market, then it means that people will they will invest into factories serving this region. So the factories will no longer service Europe and America, but they will build factories here to service ASEAN. So I think the rise of services value chains will be very positive, and the rise of the regional market will be very positive in driving investment and driving the production and the value chains in this region. I think that the shift to services needs to be supported by policy movement by the leaders in the region. And I think one of the critical areas is that services will be digital. And so you need to have an environment within ASEAN where digital services can grow. And that means that data has to be available and it has to be allowed to flow between countries. Now, obviously, there are very big concerns around this. The data has to be treated securely. The privacy discussion is very, very important. The safety of the data, how it's used, all of these rules need to be worked out. But they need to be harmonized so that data can flow from one market in ASEAN to another market in ASEAN, and then companies can get the scale that they need within the region to run profitable, efficient services businesses. So I think services will thrive here, but they need to be supported by policy movement from the leaders to make sure that it's a strong, integrated digital market, not just national, independent digital markets. I think education and skills will be the critical thing that will see ASEAN either succeed or not do so well. And for policymakers today, the critical thing they need to be doing is investing in upgrading the way that they teach and provide skills to the workforce so that they're prepared for the jobs of the future. I think that if you look at the services companies of the future, when they choose where they're going to build their businesses, there's going to be a few things that they consider. First of all is the size of the market, and ASEAN has a nice big market, so that's good. But then you need to have data, and you need to have labor, and you need to have good broadband. So the broadband needs to be efficient, high quality, and affordable. The labor needs to be very, very educated and well prepared for the future, and the data needs to be available and allowed to flow freely. So those are the considerations, but labor is certainly one of the critical ones.